Hello everyone. Welcome back to We Better Drink This Before It Goes Bad, the YouTube channel dedicated to reviewing older or secondhand gear, things that you typically can find some good deals on, but from a big-footed older blader's perspective. My name is Blair Knight, and in this installment I'm going to be reviewing an anti-rocker frame that is still available on the market that you can find some really great deals on. Now, with this, I am referring to the youth frame. I personally, when these first came out, never actually picked up a pair. I did, however, do so recently because, yet again, you can get some really, really good deals on these things. I did notice that when it came in, the frame spacers were actually built into the frame itself, so they were just plastic extensions. You typically would see that with something like a Featherlight frame. Me personally, I think that when the plastic contacts the metal surface of the bearing, it makes for more of a sluggish or slightly slower feel. So one thing that you can do is actually Dremel down that frame spacer that comes included with the sidewall of the frame that's molded to the sidewall of the frame rather. You can Dremel that down flat, and you can do some slight drill work to widen the bolt receptor spacers just a little bit, so you can then actually put in some metal frame spacers. Now, unfortunately, I could say stupid me or impatient me, I actually already did the Dremel work over maybe a week time span. It's one of those things that, for me personally, it can take just a little bit of time to do. So with one frame, I would do one wheel position on both sides, and then I'd put the project down and I'd walk away. I'd come back a day or 2 days later, and then I'd Dremel down the next wheel position, so on and so forth, until I'd actually completed that for both frames. Now, from a video standpoint, I don't have a time machine, so I can't go back and show exactly how I did the Dremel work. But what I can do is at least elaborate on the Dremel attachment or rotary tool attachment that really made getting the point or that frame spacer plastic as flat as possible, as quickly as possible. And that comes back to this attachment. It has almost like a wheel or a star shape, and just basic little ridges all the way around it. And I'll see if I can't find a link to this specific attachment that I can include in the video. So this attachment made coming through and Dremeling out that molded frame spacer, it did a phenomenal job. It didn't take too long. And then it was a function of really just making sure that I had smoothed out some of the rougher edges of that initial Dremel work, blah, 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 blah. And for that, I use that attachment. And this is just really meant for sanding and polishing. There's nothing really complicated to it. I will say that doing this work, I never went above a speed setting of 2 or 3 on my, and of course I have, talking about saving, getting good deals, this is actually a rotary tool I picked up from Radio Shack before they went out of business. I've had this for a couple of years and it does a great job. But yeah, follow up my work with using this to then come in the sidewalls and flatten out that initial shape down. And then I simply came through with handy dandy power drill and just slightly worked my way around the inside of the bolt receptor, and then made sure that I did that on both sides. The new frame spacers themselves, the fit, as you can see, this is actually a really snug fit. But I'll get a link in the description video as well as to where you could pick these up. So all in all, from a project timeline standpoint, Had and I just kind of made this as a pick up, put down project. I would imagine cumulatively, if you have any type of pre-existing experience with using a rotary tool or Dremel, you could probably get this knocked out realistically, maybe an hour, hour and a half. It's not complicated by any means. I would say that using just a power drill and a Dremel tool, you want to take your time. If you have probably better tools than I have at my disposal, you might not have that problem. Maybe you have some type of saw or what I'd say more adult-based tools readily available, then I'm sure you could come through with a drill and just run through and get the exact width that you need. I myself, yet again, running off of a very rudimentary setup of Dremel tool, power drill, much more room for operator error on my behalf. So definitely took my time, a little bit slower, but the output is I have a metal frame spacer now installed, firmly installed on each point. And now to fully validate if I did a good job or not, I'm going to be installing some wheels. Now, the feedback that I've gotten from folks that have used this frame before in the past is that this really excels more as an anti-rocker frame. So with that in mind, I'm going to follow suit with that. And I just so happen to still have these dirt box wheels that I had featured in the bearing cleaning video. So without further ado, I figured I'd go ahead and move forward with installing these wheels onto this frame. Let's see how it goes. The anti-rockers I'm going to be using for this setup, I'm actually going to be taking out from a pair of blank frames that I have. Typically I prefer anti-rockers that come with bearings, but this is what I have readily available, so that's what I'm going to use. Oops, silly me. I actually went through getting ready to set the frames and I misplaced the hardware there for a second. Kind of important. My wheels and my makeshift anti-rockers are in. So far, everything looks pretty good, minus my anti-rockers that don't spin, which will kind of drive me nuts a little bit, but that's okay. Inevitably, I'm going to want to try out the frame myself. I don't have that in my cards today. The joys of adulting with having a newborn in the household, but for at least getting you guys information on a good deal that exists on the market, and you're looking for an anti-rocker frame, take consideration of the youth frames, knowing that it really doesn't take too much work to Dremel out the frame spacer, slightly widen the hole with a power drill, and insert in some metal frame spacers. Because right now, just based off these in my hand, I know it's a little cheap. Inevitably, I'm going to put this full crash course when I have a bit more time to go out and skate and do so. But in the interim, But what I can do while we are sitting here is just gauge, you know, how well of a fit is this to a large boot. So I have a size 12 Solo. I'm just curious. So one on the boot. From a length perspective, I think it fits the boot pretty well. That's actually not half bad, right? So one more option yet again, just to reiterate. You can get good deals on these frames right now. So far from the large youth frame, how it matches up on a, what I would consider a larger sized boot, size 12 Solo, pretty big. The large sized youth frame matches up pretty well with the large size boot. Cool. All right. Another episode down. Thanks for checking in.